Welcome to Empowered Homefront Podcast, where we talk about health, wealth, and relationships. And let's not forget about the most important one. That, my friend, is faith. Because I believe that we've all been lied to. And that's the reason we're going to share with you the one thing that's going to change everything. And today we're going to be talking about trust but verify when developing A players. Kevin, what's up, brother?
What's going on, man? How are you?
Dude, I am ready to roll. Got a long day planned. I'm glad to get this going, but yeah, man. So you brought up this topic. What really like sparked your interest on Trust but Verify, man? Tell me a little bit about it.
We were in a powwow meeting, whatever you call them, company meeting, powwow meeting, business meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, powwow. And we were in there, and I forget how it. Yeah, powwow. I forget how it came up. I think it was somebody. It might. I mean, we'll just say it was me because we know I slack. Not keeping up with things, not following through, not executing, and you essentially said, "Hey, I want to build a team of A players," and then you went on to discuss what ABC players are. But but you also talked about trust but verify, where it's like trust but verify means having faith in something, but you're verifying, you're confirming the trustworthiness. Meaning, like a boss doesn't doubt that his employees are putting in the hours, but what a good boss is still going to check the timesheet just to make sure, you know. So you trust that us, the stuff that you delegate to us. Hey, I trust that these people are going to do it because you have a very, very strict, I'll just call it a hiring process, of people you want on your team, because you don't want people that don't have core values, principles, standards. We talked about that. And you don't want people who are just like, oh, well, here's an excuse. So I think that's how it came up. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. So like right off the bat, let's define A, B, and C players, right? And we'll get this out really quick and dive into like the actual implementation. But right off the bat, C player, we don't want those people on our teams. All right. They're the people who are always whining, who are always late, never showing up. They always have an issue. They're bringing their personal problems to work. Like those people, they need to go somewhere else. Okay. We're not even going to talk about them. We don't waste time on them. We get rid of them as quickly as possible. And that's the whole purpose of the interview process, right? We want to get rid of C players. Now, I believe that B players can be developed for A player to become A players. Now, a B player is simply someone who you can depend on. Okay, so a B player, dependability, period. Because if someone's showing up, if someone is putting in the action, if someone can take instruction and execute on it, meaning I built all the task out, and then they can go through and they can say, hey, I'm going to check this box. I'm going to check this box. I'm going to check this box. And they can follow those instructions, and you can depend on them to get that done on time. That's a B player. And it's pretty simple. I mean, I think that's what we expect everybody to do whenever they show up to work. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I would hope so.
I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, like it's nothing hard about this. Like, it's to be expected. But unfortunately, I've worked with them, you worked with them, and C players are out there, right? Like, we was in the government, and C players are everywhere. Like, my gosh. Dude.
I mean, you and I saw firsthand, it's pretty hard to get fired from a federal job. Like, I don't want to say the R word on the podcast, but you essentially have to like sexually assault somebody to get fired. And even then, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got stories of the guy that got popped for cocaine use twice,
Yeah.
Fired, right? Like crazy. But then there's A player, and this is what we want to talk about. So for one, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, yeah, I can do all those things. Well, what's the difference in a B player and A player? Because a B player is getting stuff done, right? The difference is an A player takes responsibility and owns the responsibility for delivering results to the team or to the company. You take responsibility. You are responsible. You take your own initiative to deliver results. That's an A player. That's somebody who can take a project and they can sit down and create the task that needs to be done in order to execute. They can sit down and they can reach out to the other B players and point them in the right direction. They take responsibility. And that's the big thing. That's the big difference between them, right? They're still doing the same thing, dependability, all that other stuff, all that other stuff. B, A players, that's a given. It's just, do you take an ownership of delivering results? And when we think about that, a lot of times B players strive to be A players, but they haven't developed the skills yet in order to deliver the results. And when that happens, that's where leadership steps in. Like I step in with you all the time, and I'm just like, hey, man, like this is what we're doing. This is your next lesson. This is the next thing you're going to learn. And then after this, like you should be able to do it on your own. And that's me like giving you that distance, right? That space to make mistakes on your own, right? So, like, as a leader, as a boss, you should encourage your entire team to make mistakes. Now, I'm not saying cost you money. I'm saying to try new stuff, encourage them to make mistakes, encourage them to try things that are out of their comfort zone. That way they can improve and develop those skills.
Yeah, with you saying that, I want to go back to what you said about developing B players into A players. It sounds like you don't have any hope for C players. Have you, in
No.
your experience, so you don't think that a C player can be developed into a B player and then into an A player
Oh, yeah.
with the right?
I believe everybody can change. Absolutely. I believe everybody can change. I'm saying I'm not dealing with helping a C player become a B player because C players, the dividing factor is they have no values and they have no morals,
Okay.
right?
Well,
And
yeah.
the other one is they have no standards.
How
And
many?
yeah, I'm not bringing in a C player into my culture where I hire on standards, right? Where I hire on values. And you don't have to be intelligent. Like you don't have to be, and what I mean by intelligent is like you don't have to know how to do all the skills, like we're a growing company, so I hire at a very low experience level because of pay. And then, I'm trying to develop a culture where people grow inside of the company. And then hopefully in a year from now, 2 years from now, our company is so big that, yeah, I can hire for a little bit more experience. Right. And then that'll shorten our growth time. But yeah, to answer your question and stay on the C player, no, absolutely not. Like,
To follow up with that, though, I appreciate your answer. I mean, I understand now. C players, get out of here. Don't want to waste my time on you. Now, does that come from personal experience when you've been building all this for the last like 7 years?
yep.
So, I don't know if you want to share a quick story about how you came into this because CBA players, it's pretty much, you can Google it and find these terms. I'm
Can you
pretty
really?
sure we,
I know
yeah,
they're out there, but I haven't ever actually Googled it and like read descriptions on them. And like these are like literally just what I'm thinking they are.
well, you can Google. All right, this is where like the intelligence and the common sense thing comes in. You can Google what an A player is, so therefore, I think you can figure out what a B and C player is. Is
Okay.
what I meant.
Yeah, you probably can. Surely that's out there.
It has to be, but so you have experience with C players, and that's where you came up with the standard of this. We don't want C players here. Like, I'm not wasting my time on it. If I see the potential in a B player, I can recognize that from experience from what I've done. And it's kind of like that. What did we talk about earlier? That cold interview. Do I even want you in here? This is a free little call. Like, we'll see if you're, and it's an interview process, and you can see the characteristics this person may have. Okay, I can maybe groom this person, influence this
It,
person to.
it's something else too, because when people talk about interviews, we don't do interviews first. Like interviews not happening. Instead, it's a qualification process,
I've
right?
seen that.
Yeah. So it's a essentially mini task that they have to do. And mainly what we hire is virtual assistants, right? Like you and Jen are the only like Americans, and Jen's a Canadian. Um,
Poor Jen.
Poor Jen. But like both of y'all, like y'all are completely different scenario, which I can talk about, later. But with hiring VAs, right, virtual assistants, that's where we're growing our company, because like that's the level of hiring that I can afford. I can't afford to go out and pay somebody who has all the experience, because they'll want it to come in and take ownership of the company. And then they're going to want to take ownership of the company, and they don't even have the skills in order to get me where I need to be. Right. And I see this time after time after time of like, and by the way, I'll go ahead and drop this too. The worst place you can go to find people to hire for your company is inside of masterminds. For instance, like I'm in real estate, right? I'm a real estate investor. We got a real estate software, we got a real estate program and mentorship. And inside of that, I would not ever, I did it in the past. I would not ever again go to a mastermind group that has, 5, 10, 20,000 people in it who all signed up and paid money to learn about real estate investing, because they all have one thing in common. They want to be the owner, but they're not willing to do what an owner does. So
Mic drop.
So whenever they come into your company, what they're going to do is they're going to be trying to be the owner, and they're not going to follow your systems. They're not going to follow your instructions. They're going to butt heads with you because they see it another way. And if you want to try to do that battle, then that's fine. I have tried to bring in other people who are in these groups who've moved properties before and plug them in and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody to run my dispo team. I'm looking for somebody to run my acquisitions team. And I was hoping that they could take it and run with it and be an A player. But instead, they didn't want to take the time out to develop the team. They didn't want to take the time out to learn the systems. Instead, what they wanted to do is continue to do it their way, continue to do it the old way, continue to do it with the one-man show way. And that last part is what gets you. They don't understand what it takes, how they have to slow down before they speed up in order to scale.
So what I'm hearing, and I think you get off on this because yeah, I think you get off on this is I think you personally, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you so what you just said influences how you hire people, obviously.
Yeah.
Clear cut and dry. I think you like going out and finding these B players, we'll just say B player VAs, because I think you like developing people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's what you search for. I think you go out personally to find B players and go, okay, this B player could be a busy B and a worker B. And, I even have it right here written down, dude. I still have this thing right here, this post-it note. It says worker B can be developed into an idea man with skills, can be developed into an entrepreneur. Like I have that. I look at it every single day I sit down. So if that's the influence that Eric has had on me, like, I have a post-it note of
Awesome.
something I thought was silly in the beginning, but now it means so much to me. So yeah, you go out and look for B players, developing the A players because you like teaching. I mean, you have taught me a lot. You do all these Loom videos. You take all this time out to do all these things.
Yeah.
Whether or not I watch the last 45 seconds of it, if you haven't,
sometimes that last 45 seconds is important.
Oh yeah, I learned that the hard way. But the thing I also want to go into and ask you about as well is, so with developing B players into A players, you obviously want to nurture them and water them and plant these seeds so they can blossom and grow. How do you feel about the word micromanaging? Because what you were talking about is you essentially said you let your B players, you give them a leash long enough so
Yeah,
where they can actually develop themselves, which I'm hearing is you cannot develop A players will not exist if you micromanage them
correct.
because you don't allow them to grow and develop. So, what's
Yeah,
your take on micromanaging and how you I mean, first of all, I think we know what you think about it, but talk about it a little bit more and how
yeah,
you can how that can damage somebody from because we've all seen it in the workforce. You and I personally, with management coming down with rules. You can't do that. You can't do that. It's like, well, it's written here that I can in our rule book, and you're saying that I can't. All right, then I'll come in and I'll put I'll run 10 miles between them instead of 5 because you said that it almost was dangerous, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of my leadership skills have been developed through military experience, through FA experience, and when I say developed through those experiences, it was not the right things to do. It was all the things that I knew I'll never do. Right? It was the wrong things to do,
I
and
think that's how we learn. We were like, we're
yeah,
not doing that.
yeah, because I lived those experiences. I was the A player who was being throttled back, right? Like, dude, when I get in an environment, like I perform, like I show up and I play ball. And, if somebody's around me trying to beat me, like it's nose nose going back and forth. And you've seen this firsthand, right? Like,
Mhm.
and whenever you get micromanaged by somebody who has an opinion, that like sets an A player off, right? And I mean that was just triggered a series of events for me where like I'm no longer in that career field. Like screw it, I'll go out and do something else and be even more successful. Thank you for micromanaging me, right? But micromanaging absolutely has a good way to be used, right? So let me explain one concept that really helped me understand um how to look at things. And I got told this by one of my buddies who got me into like learning automation, which is another story. But he told me, he said, "Man, there's always a far left and a far right. And whenever you look at a far right or far left decision, right, wrong, put anything you want to in these two categories. Whenever you look at them and you're running an operation where there's variables, there's things that happen, where you need to be is normally not way over here or way over here. Instead, it's somewhere right here in the middle. And if you play ball right here in the middle, that's going to give you a little bit of slack to go both ways. And now you don't put yourself and back yourself up into a corner, or your team in this case, into a corner. So for instance, in air traffic, what Kevin's kind of sharing is like we would have these supervisors who very low experience as far as working actual traffic. And, there's always this saying, which I don't think is true, but like through the controllers, they're like, oh, yeah, so and so becomes a supervisor because they can't work traffic. That's true in some cases. I don't think it's true in all cases. I also know supervisors that were amazing and could work traffic just fine. Right. So, again, to my point, it's somewhere in the middle, right? It wasn't like all supervisors become supervisors because they can't work traffic. Instead, it's some may, right? That's a possibility, that's a variable.
Mhm.
Bring this back into micromanaging. Whenever someone first starts, they have to develop trust. They have to earn your trust. Trust isn't given, it is earned. And that's any situation. All right. So if you walk into a new environment, somebody that doesn't know you, and you're a leader, you're a player, and you just start taking charge, they're going to look at you and be like, who the heck do you think you are? Because you haven't earned that trust yet. And trust is earned through credentials, credibility, building credibility, rapport, right? Stories, right? There's all different ways we can earn somebody's trust, right? Like even you, Kevin, like I had to earn your trust. If I just told you all the stuff that I'm doing and building and the vision and everything else, you're like, yeah, dude, that's cool. Like, well, I don't, yeah, that's not for me. But instead,
But
I'm
yeah,
in little bitty.
hmm yeah. What I was going to say is, um, you know, I mean, you're pretty much answering the part of the framework that we written out, like why you have to build trust and how it leads to development of A players. Because I think, like, just from my experience, I think if you have a manager or boss or a leader that doesn't trust the people underneath of him that he's trying to lead and make better and develop into A players, then that leads into that other side, that other far side of, we'll say trust is a, we'll say, trust and micromanaging. I feel like you go all the way over to the micromanaging when you're not trusting people. And that start, that, what's that movie? The Other Guys with Will
Yeah.
Ferrell and he's like,
Expected, right? Like lack of
yeah,
trust, micromanage. Shortly.
yeah, I'm a peacock. Let me fly. Like, you don't let people peacock. Um, but yeah, the the it just I'm reflecting right now on all of the experiences that I've had, and then when I was put into a leadership position, going back to the military days, like I was a crew boss of like 25 people, and it was evident, like, this isn't me tooting my own horn or bragging or anything. But when I had people from the other crew coming up to me going, "Hey, how do I get on your crew? Who do you like the least on your crew so we could switch them out with me?"
Yeah.
It's because I just told the trainers, I said, "Look, this is my rules. This is," or I called them rules at the time because I didn't really have any standards back then. Um, I didn't know that word. I'm a big boy now. Um, and I would go, "All right, look, this is it. We got 8 hours today." I said, "We can extend it to 10 if y'all want." I said, "But if you're in charge of somebody, in charge of a trainee, you make sure they get their 2 hours in position and then they run their hour sim
Yeah.
and you get your eval done." And then I was like, "If you're done, we'll see if I can let you out early to go PT, you know?" So that's how I did it. And I'm telling you, just by doing that and letting people know that I trusted them to get it done, I still went back and verified it. Like, "Hey, just making sure you got your sim done." And that's all I would say.
Yeah.
And I developed A players because every single day after that I took over. It took about a month to change the culture on my crew, but it was for the better.
So let's dive into that a little bit, man, because this is a really good example. What you're describing is a very laid back leadership style.
I was a very informal leader.
Yeah. And what that means is you had either one, and I'm not saying this is a situation, one, you just didn't care. Two, you had minimum expectations. And as long as those minimum expectations were met, then you know that the job would be done. And a lot of times, like I mean, I've been there in that shoes. I was never a crew boss, but like I've been, I can relate to the experience, right? So, let's describe this for listeners who've never been in the military, especially air traffic, right? So, like air traffic, amazing career, absolutely love air traffic. All right, if any kids are listening to this, go become an air traffic controller. All right, all right, it's really good, and join the Air Force to go do it. Right, like, there's my recommendation. But the Air Force. Think about all of the development that's happened. Right, in any military branch. Period. You go in, you sign the dotted line, and when we talk about, hey, can a C player become an A player? Well, this is proof that it can happen. You join boot camp, and now all of a sudden you're in training. In boot camp, the TI or drill sergeant, whatever you want to call them, is picking bay leaders, element leaders, whatever the other one is, team leader, right? And he's just randomly picking them. And the reason he's randomly picking them is because they demonstrated some type of respect from the rest of the people. So
Mhm.
they showed already naturally, just through natural, mingling or whatever that is, that everybody else kind of respects them in some way, right? And he's like, hey, you're a leader, you're a leader, you're a leader. And he starts putting these people in there. But are those people always good leaders?
I mean, it's probably a lot of them. It's the first time we've ever had to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And they don't know what to do. So they probably suck.
Mm-hmm.
Ours did. But it was because of the experience. But at the same time, though, they got their first taste of having to lead, making decisions without being guided. Everybody else in the whole element was just like, yeah, what do you want us to do next? Right. And then that one person has to say, you go do this, you go do that. Right. But that's basic military training. Now, everybody that was watching that one leader is also learning. That leader makes a mistake. Everybody in here saw what not to do. That leader got something right and the TI came in and praised them. Everybody in that element got to see what's good to do. Right. And this is development of people. Right. Like, dude, I had a grown man, like, he shit the bed multiple times, pissed on himself multiple times. I mean, I don't know where the guy is now, but I'm pretty sure he's probably doing okay in the Air Force. Right. But like, this is a grown man who's peeing on himself and pooping on himself in basic training. Right. So, like, there's all different levels. Right. But, like, you don't want somebody who can't hold their own pee showing up and working for you. Right. My point is, that's one phase of development. And then all of a sudden they go to school, they go learn their career. Right. So air traffic, we go to air traffic school and we learn those things. And through that, there's still some type of form of leadership development.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then after that, we're still learning. Then we go to our duty station, right? Our first station where we always go through on the job training. Okay. Now, on the job training is our first real taste of having to make decisions by ourselves, right? Like, yeah, we studied, yeah, we marched, we did all this stuff, but on the job training, now it's like, okay, all this stuff that I've learned, now I got to figure out how to execute. So, if we started this from the beginning, boot camp, I'm discovering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going to school, learning the trade, I'm discovering and I'm learning and I'm discovering and I'm learning. Then I go to my first duty station. Now it's time to execute. And this is where in air traffic, like over 50% of the people don't make it, right? I know at Nellis Air Force Base, like we had like a 60% plus washout rate. And it was through the complexity. Like it was very difficult. Like I showed up with 10 people and only 2 of us made it. All career fields aren't like that, but air traffic is. And the reason why is because even though they knew the information because they passed the school, so that means they took a test, but they could not perform. They could not execute. And because they could not execute, the Air Force has it in place. Hey, you're not a good fit for this position. You don't fit here, but let me take you over here and I think you'll do okay. So now I'm going to send you back through school. You're going to discover, you're going to learn, you're going to show up to your duty station, and now you're going to execute. And now we're going to see if you can perform. Right?
I mean,
That's the model for Air Force. And we're talking about the military who's been successful for many, many years. Okay. And then through that process, after that, right, you end up getting checked out, you end up getting rated. Immediately, they're looking and they're like, who can be an instructor? Who can teach? Who can teach? Oh, you can't teach? I want you to like shadow this guy because this old man who's been in the career field for 25 years is a great teacher. I want you to work closer to him and learn how to teach. And then you got the whole crew boss thing, right? Same thing,
mm-hmm.
right? Exact same cycle. All of this is a cycle. And when it comes down to it, it's a choice for the individual that determines whether they're a C, B, or A player. It's not the experiences because we all have experiences to learn from. It's whether you choose to accept that opportunity and execute at the highest level that you're capable of, right? And for a lot of people, they settle. For a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
right?
Um, yeah. The one thing that I think ties into this too is to be a good leader to develop your CBs into A's or B's into A's is learning style. So I always harped on learning style. I looked at people and I go, okay, how does this person perceive feedback? How does this person perceive and accept regular check-ins? And, I had, a minimal amount of people. So learning 25-ish people it wasn't difficult to learn. But I think that was very important with my leadership style. And I'm sure you've seen this too, because not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody receives the feedback the same way. So it's not that I don't want to say you're essentially catering, because I still put my foot down and I still said, hey, like, you're still messing up. But being able to talk to people, how they receive information, I think is very, very important, because I can't talk to you and give you feedback the same way that I can give my wife feedback.
Yes, I know where you're going with this, right? And I understand the concept. Let's close the loop on micromanaging. So, like that whole thing with the military that I just described, the military micromanages in the beginning, and towards your development, they start creating you leaders, right? That was the big takeaway. Now you're talking about learning styles. Learning styles make it complicated for people to develop. It makes it complicated for people to just accept the fact that they need to put in more work. It gives them an excuse to justify. Is it wrong? No. Like, I absolutely agree that people learn differently, right? Like, you got your auditorial, you got your visual, you got your actual execution. But at the base of things, repetition is the mother of all skill.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody learns the exact same. And this is the reason I'm saying this. Everybody learns by doing the thing, period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What happens is like we'll learn this stuff. I was taught the exact same stuff, and I agree with it. Like, I use it. I use it on you every once in a while. I use it on the other team, but at the same time, I don't really focus on the individual. I don't go, "Hey, this person's learning this way." Instead, I focus on how do I teach that encompasses all of these things, because that's actually what they're teaching. They're not teaching somebody how to learn. They're teaching somebody how to teach. Does that?
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know if I was clear on, maybe I was clear on what I was saying.
Yeah, you was
Like,
clear, man.
yeah.
Yeah, everybody learns different. Like, yeah. But like the big thing that is spun on that is like you said you can't communicate to me the same way as you can your wife, right? Like, everybody's learning different. Um it goes back to who's being taught, right? Who's teaching. So if you're teaching and you're only on the phone and you're only saying words, that's auditorial learning, right? So
Mhm.
if you don't learn that way, like, are you ever going to learn? And to me, that's not true. That goes back to, if I'm over here and I cannot learn through listening to something, then I must learn this way. Like, that's not true. It's somewhere in the middle. You can eventually learn by just listening.
Yeah, maybe
How
maybe
many
I
reps does it take?
yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, execution is like the key. Is like, hey, you can learn it through listening. You can listen to a book on tape, but or you can watch a video, or you can, until you put, like, you know, the hammer to the nail, so to speak. Like, you're not going to know how to apply. You're not going to know how to execute. What I was getting at is, from a leadership standpoint, there's some people that can accept and need to be told, like, hey, you suck, do better. And then there's other people where it's like you have to be different with your words, where you can't come at them and point at them and say, hey, you suck, do better. It's like, hey, man, I identified these problems. Tell me where you think you're going wrong and stuff like that. And I personally don't think that's coddling, because if I still see that somebody can go from a B to an A player, like, I mean, I've done it personally, you know, because you trained me in the FAA. You know me. It's a, Kevin, I'm not mad at you. I'm disappointed. And that gets to me more and makes me want to better myself more than if you just said, hey, dude, you suck. I don't think that doesn't do anything to me. But other people are like, oh, they think I suck. I'll prove them wrong. I'm going to get better. And they do.
So I'm learning about this now, and like I've been practicing and everything else, and it goes. This is the way I understand it, because again, what you're talking about is not how to learn, but how to teach.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at in the first
Yeah,
comment.
no, like the whole thing. But like, I want to clarify, like, we talk about the people learn differently. It's not to show them how to learn, because that doesn't teach you how to learn. What teaches you how to learn is the DLR system: discover, learn, execute, replicate. Right? Like that teaches you how to learn. Um, with what you just said goes to, how do you train a dog?
Repetition.
If the dog does something wrong and you flick them on the nose, people teach a dog that way, but that's
Mm.
through pain. Then there's the people who believe the opposite. And they're like, don't ever spank your dog or flick their ear or flick their nose, and instead reward them with a treat. That's positive training. And then, it said, okay, well, hey, positive training is always better than negative training. And to your point, what you're saying is some people are more motivated by the dark side, and other people are more motivated by positive side, right? Which is true, right? Like me, tell me I can't do something, right? Like, dude, I will prove you wrong every time, right? And it was
Mhm.
life's mission. But then if you praise me and I don't find it important anymore, I don't have anything to prove, I may slow down, right? So like that,
Mhm.
that's what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
when you develop a team, like looking at that, I mean, it doesn't really play into it. And the reason it doesn't play into it is focused too much on the individual and not the individual fitting into the culture. Because what you're actually doing when you're building in a team is not training the individual, it's you're building a culture, right? So everything that we already said is all about the individual, which is not how you build a company. It's not how you build a team. Instead, you write down your definition. Hey, these are my A players, and this is how, in this culture, you define yourself as an A player. If you want to be an A player, you comply with this. If you want to be a B player, this is what you do not do, right? And it's
Mhm.
culture. The culture is what's so important in this whole conversation. Trust but verify, not micromanaging, giving people a little bit of space, developing people. It's not the individual, it's not the leader one on one. It's the leader in the company developing this culture, and the culture is built by pulling people in. My culture has been ruined multiple times by bringing in Americans who want to be the boss, right? And they have these ideas, but they can't execute on shit, and they suck, right? I've had a guy come in who has money, executed once in life, but he couldn't execute on this team. He couldn't close a paper bag. And end up what happening? I end up separating the relationship. And then 4 months later, I had four of my team members that I've trained and poured my heart and soul in quit. And then 1 month later, they show up on a Zoom with him.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's toxicity. Are they doing anything? No, they ain't doing anything. He's got the same thing he's got now, and he'll never do anything else because he's already maxed out his potential. And I know he can't develop a culture. So the only culture that he has now is the culture that I built with that four players that he stole. And
Why
that
do you
culture will continue to get more toxic because he is leading it.
why so I mean this I don't know if this is along the same topic of trust and verifying A players, but why do you think I mean you kind of explained why the relationship between you and him soured. Why do you think that those four people that left and went with him is because they couldn't step up to the plate and develop themselves as A players in your culture and they found an easier way to be an A player in the culture that he wanted to create or anything?
Mm-mm. No, no, it's very simple. They get paid more money.
So they got okay.
Yeah, I mean it's very simple, right? Like VAs, like you can literally. I mean, it's a virtual assistant that's working in third world country. If I'm paying them $3 an hour and he offers them four, they're probably going to leave. If he
Yeah.
offers them five, they're probably going to leave. Were they worth $4 or $5? Absolutely. Those girls were probably worth $10 an hour because I trained them and they know what they're doing. They can hold their own because I developed them as A players. And I'm proud of them, right? And that's one thing that I had to accept. I had to learn to accept loss in a positive way because it bothered me when I first saw it and heard about it that they would do that to me because they didn't tell me they was leaving for more pay or anything. Instead, what they did was they said that they had family issues and they kind of just went out one by one. And and then it was obvious what happened afterwards, right? And that definitely bothered me. And it took me a little bit to kind of reflect on it, but at the same time, I was proud because I trained them. I nurtured them into winners. Every one of those girls, whenever they first started with me, had zero real estate experience. They never made a phone call in their life. They never got anything up under contract, never had any experience, period. And whenever at this time, they generated 2 to 3 leads a day. And like once a week, they could have a contract or be nurturing a lead towards a contract where a closer just comes in and close it. On top of that, they could underwrite basic underwriting, meaning like they could say, "Hey, I got this lead. I'm going to look at it real quick. Should we spend time on it or should we not?" We call those quick and dirties. And what that does is it allows me to spend more of my time on higher value activities, things that they cannot do yet. Right. So all four of those girls, dude, I'm super proud of them. Like, dude, like, I mean, they left me. It sucks, but they left me for more pay and they went to somebody that's way less of a leader than I am. And I know that for a fact because he was on my team and he couldn't lead. Right.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
he could do things like close people. And that's what he was here for. And literally, he shit the bed on every follow up call that got set up for him. Multiple calls. I get on the phone afterwards to save the deal, and that was proven. And, that's the reason I ended the relationship. But, and just to dive in that little bit of the story at the same time, because people might be wondering, like, well, why did you ever get involved with this guy? Well, there's three things that it takes to make a deal. One is experience, two is money, three is hard work or grit. And you got to have all three in order to get a deal, in order to make money anywhere, right? This guy has experience, and he has money. The experience that he has was he built a Airbnb portfolio, right? And
Hmm.
he also had money because Airbnbs are a cash cow, right? They really are. Like they're just pumping cash. And I was looking at it as a good business partnership where he could come in, fund some deals, we can move more deals together, and he could help close some of these leads that we don't have time to work. But when it came down to it, he couldn't perform on closing. And money, dude, I can find money anywhere. And then he wanted 50% of the business.
Huh.
And I was just like, what value? And I had to learn this the hard way, so I know we're getting away from the A player, B player, C players, but since we're on the topic, I don't want people to make the same mistake. And this was a very, very painful lesson that I learned. And I wish I knew now what I know because I wouldn't have made the mistake. But essentially, every time you have somebody that you're thinking about doing something with, you need to ask yourself one question. What do they bring to the table that I do not have? And if you cannot answer that, don't do it. Period.
Hmm.
Second question is, if they bring something to the table that I do not have, if the worst thing possible that could happen happens, am I okay going down with them? Am I okay getting in a situation where I'm going to lose everything I have and they're my partner that's supposed to help me get out of it? If the answer to these two questions are hesitant at all, don't do it, period. Because there's always somebody else. Always. So, with this situation, this guy, yes, he had money. He had more money than I have. Experience, does not have more experience than me. Work ethic, does not have more work ethic than me. Does not have extra skills than I had. Only thing he brought to the table was money. But he talked a really good game. And because he talked a really good game, he did sell me on it a little bit because I was wanting to grow bigger. And he solved that problem for me. The question I did not ask myself was, if I get into a bad situation, would this guy be there? And you got to ask that question, right? If you're thinking about getting in a partnership with somebody who you're literally about to put it on paper and writing, then that's the question you need to ask. If something happens, are you willing to lose everything you have? Are you willing to lose your house, your car, your boat, if this company goes down? And if
Never
the
thought
answer
about
to
it like
them is
that.
no, don't do it.
I've never thought about it like that, man.
Period, dude. That's the way to handle business relationships, dude. If you're gonna put something on writing where somebody wants 50% of your company or 40% or 20%, like, no, dude. Like, these are the questions that need to be asked.
Um,
And what we're talking about is equity shares too, right? We're not talking about employees.
yeah, ownership of the company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me bring you back to to the topic at hand. I want to ask you another question about this developmental process of B to A players. And it's along the lines of how do you so if you naturally have this is a two-parter and it's just answer it real short. If you have a natural A player, do, will they always stay an A player or will there be regression? Like in your experience, will A players naturally just always stay A players?
It's environment.
Okay, good. You answered it. My second part of that is when you nurture a B player into an A player, what are your methods or what do you think is it might be the same answer of environment. How do you keep a B player as an A player once you've nurtured them into that? Is it through environment? Is it through constructive feedback? Is it through praise and reward? Like say you had the capital and the equity to do it. Like, hey, like you put in a program where it's like, hey, if you perform this and say you meet a certain quota of leads, you get a bonus. Like, is that stuff that keeps people? Because that to me seems, it goes down the rabbit hole of people operate off of material stuff versus just,
Yeah, what
whatever.
you're talking about there is like pay incentives, right? Which are important, but at the
Well,
same time, you got to ask
yes,
your.
no,
Well, no, they are important, right? I mean, they are. If someone
no, no,
has
no,
a skill,
no. What I was asking was like, I mean, yeah, pay incentives is a thing, but how do you keep people from regressing from A players back to B players? Is it through positive reinforcement, feedback, rewards, stuff like that, or is it just environment?
yes, environment, right?
What do you mean by that?
So an environment is culture. What is culture? Culture is the soil, the nutrients that is in your company. It's all the little things that you keep mentioning, and it's the combination of them all,
Gotcha.
right? So for me, whenever I first made the decision to do this, I'm all alone. My environment sucks. I don't have anybody I can confide in. If I make a mistake, it is my mistake. I can't run to Lori. She can't help me. My wife, right? I don't have any partners that can help make the decision. It's mine. I had to own it and I had to eat every mistake that I made. And that was the environment that molded me into an entrepreneur, into a leader. And it's the environment where now, whenever a hard decision gets in front of me, I can make that hard decision and I can stand behind it because I know why. Or if I can't make that hard decision, I know where to go find that answer. That environment molded me. Whenever I hire somebody, they come in and start working for the team. You got to set proper expectations. I set them with you. I've told you about all these other people who came in and want to be a part of this vision and they couldn't hack it.